Hello there. Have you ever heard of the TPI? Well, if you are a teacher, it's a really great tool that you can use to examine your ideas and your thoughts about teaching. It's a 45-item questionnaire and it's based on over 2 decades of research conducted all over the world. My name is Lynn Beckles and I'm going to be using the TPI to share with you about my teaching philosophy. Now, the TPI stands for Teaching Perspective Inventory, and it's a really useful tool to reflect on your philosophy as it's guided by 5 specific perspectives. Now, a very important element of taking this profile is to ensure that you focus on a specific context and group of learners. And so for me, taking this profile on October 2019, I will be reflecting on the last 9 years of teaching. It's an undergraduate program taught across all of the programs offered at the open campus of the University of the West Indies. It's delivered online. The course is a mandatory one and it's called Introduction to Sociology. Because it's a first-year program, the group of learners very diverse. Could be an adult learner who is employed, or it could be a student who just left secondary school and is no work experience and is now embarking on their academic career. So, are you ready to see my profile? There you go. That's my TPI profile sheet. You'd see that my dominant perspectives are that of nurturing and developmental. My backup perspectives, transmission and apprenticeship. And my recessive perspective is social reform. So, the only question left to answer as I consider my philosophy, is this really me? The answer is yes. The TPI profile sheet quite aptly captures who I think I am right now as a teaching professional. There are some surprises there, which I'm going to discuss with you in a minute. So I'm going to summarize each perspective and how they fall into my profile as it relates to the perspectives that are dominant, my backup perspectives, and recessive perspective. Then I'm going to go through the internal consistencies and discrepancies within each perspective. Then I'm going to make a comparison across the perspectives. And then I'm going to share with you my future plans. So I thought I would go to the webpage to discuss my summaries with you. So nurturing 41, developmental 40, these were my dominant perspectives. No surprises here, as these concepts quite aptly describe how I feel about my students as learners. But remembering that the TPI discusses perspectives and not styles or technique, it was really important that you take a closer look at the summaries and what the concepts mean in this context. As it relates to nurturing, I do embrace failure. I'm very quick to share my personal experiences of failure as a student with my students. I'm also quick to impress on them the difference between a failure and an excuse. A failure would be the end result after they have given it a good try. So whether it would be their time management or the assimilation of content, their inability to meet the predetermined mark or standard as per the rubric, for example, would be an opportunity for them to set new goals for themselves so that the next time they're asked to do that task, or whether it's an assignment or not, they do have a standard towards which to work to demonstrate that competency. Developmental, yes, as I plan and deliver my content, I do think about the diverse needs of my students. Whether it's an adult learner who is back in the classroom after years and they're coming to classes part-time, or it's that student who just left secondary school, still enthusiastic and energetic about pursuing their educational journey, I try to make sure that I cater to both extremes of the spectrum. And so I'm very open to one-on-one tutoring. I also employ the VARC reference model as I consider learning ability as well. So whether a student be highly visual, auditory, or if they like a lot of reading, or if I need to create an activity where they learn by doing or by application of the concepts, I'm quite willing to do that. And so as dominant perspectives, I was quite happy with nurturing and developmental. As it relates to my backup perspectives, this is where the surprises start for me. For transmission, very little surprise here, as I do believe mastery of subject matter content is critical. That fluency with your subject matter, that's the thing that allows you to be able to clarify your misunderstandings for your students, answer questions, giving timely feedback, collecting errors, and it allows you to competently facilitate learning, particularly if you're interested in addressing diverse needs simultaneously. And our classes are as large as 34 students. What was a surprise though is that it wasn't dominant, but it didn't fall too far behind as a backup, so I was somewhat satisfied with that. Apprenticeship though, the ability for students to become independent learners, that was a bit of a surprise for me, because as a backup perspective, it is dangerously close to being a recessive perspective in my profile at this moment. So this is a bit of a surprise because I come to academia from a corporate background where I'm preoccupied with making sure that students can apply knowledge as quickly as possible. And I want to be a part of that effort within tertiary institutions. Perhaps this is not foremost in my mind, as this course is a first-year course and students still have a second and a third year to go. And this course is also a foundation course as it relates to the different programs that students are doing, different degree programs that students are doing. And so perhaps it's not foremost because there are additional opportunities for students to develop independent ability. But this is a surprise. Also a surprise for me was social reform. I mean, the very nature of the subject matter that I'm reflecting on, which I feel very strongly about, I thought that I was opinionated and more concerned with the collective. But based on where this perspective has been placed in my profile, it seems as if I focus more on the individual in the delivery of this content. And so I'm comfortable with developmental and nurturing as my dominant traits. But as it relates to the placement of transmission, apprenticeship, and social reform, some surprises for me to think about. Here's my TPI profile sheet again. Now let's look at the internal consistencies and discrepancies within the perspectives. So we agree that the dominant positions, nurturing and developmental, they're very strongly held. They're in the 40s. We agree that transmission, moderately held position, in its 30s. And as per my surprise, apprenticeship and social reform are very weakly hedged in their 20s. If we use the 3-point differential recommended to check internal consistency, I cannot accept that my transmission perspective, there is some inconsistency there. Beliefs are 13, intention 9, actions 12. There's also inconsistency with social reform. Beliefs 11, intention 6, actions 9. And in both cases, I believe that, as I would have discussed when reviewing my summary positions, that I still haven't quite reconciled in the case of transmission, facilitating independent learning in the course under review, and as far as social reform is concerned, facilitating the voice of the collective. I very much focus on the individual within that perspective. As it relates to internal consistency across the perspectives, my position on apprenticeship, developmental, and nurturing would hold, and the areas of concern would be transmission and social reform, where the disconnect between my intentions and what I believe and what I actually do is significantly lower. As I reflect on the recommended areas, I don't believe that there are any job constraints. I'm very clear in my mind as to what is expected of me as a facilitator on this course. Perhaps what this review will help me to do is better articulate the areas that I personally may need to pay attention to, or I may need to find support within the course delivery to improve on, particularly facilitating independent learning and personally the extent to which I want to be an advocate for the collective conscience. I believe I can confidently conclude that the TPI profile that we've been discussing in the last few minutes quite accurately captures my thoughts and ideas concerning my teaching philosophy, and it has been useful in providing some specific areas that I can focus on as it relates to my professional development. In the immediate future, I would want to complete the profile with reference to a different context and perhaps the same learner group. I need to understand what is happening with my transmission, apprenticeship, and social reform perspectives to see if there's any change if the context changes. I'm also likely to take the time to complete this profile every semester, perhaps at the beginning or at the end of every semester, so that I can look holistically at how my teaching philosophy evolves. The 5 perspectives presented in the TPI are very useful points of reflection. I'd be very keen to see if my developmental and nurturing perspectives maintain their dominance in my overall review. So thanks very much to the facilitators who would have required that we do this exercise. Thank you very much for listening, and feel free to contact me should you want to discuss anything that I have shared in the last 10 minutes. Bye.